The villagers whispered that the Alpha King of the North consumed his brides by the full moon. So when she was traded to him for 3 crates of silver, she prepared for death. She never expected the most feared monster in the realm to fall to his knees. The year was 1247, and the harvest had failed for the 3rd consecutive time in the southern valleys. But the famine was not what drove Lord Godwin of House Whitmore to his knees. It was his crushing gambling debts and a failed rebellion that left him owing 50,000 pieces of gold to the Lycan territories. Seraphina stood in the shadows of the great hall, the damp stone chilling her bare feet. She was 20 years old, dressed in faded homespun wool that belonged more to a scullery maid than a nobleman's daughter, while her younger half-sister, Cecily, draped herself in imported silk and slept on feather beds. Seraphina was the family's shameful secret. Born of Lord Godwin's first wife, a woman suspected of practicing ancient herbalism before she died under mysterious circumstances, Seraphina was treated as nothing more than an unpaid servant. The heavy oak doors of the manor violently swung open, letting in a howling gust of autumn wind and the overwhelming scent of pine, iron, and raw, predatory dominance. The Alpha King had come to collect. King Cailan of the Northern Steppes did not look like a monarch. He looked like a god of war carved from merciless glacier ice. He stood well over 6.5 feet tall, clad in blackened steel armor and a massive wolf pelt that draped over his broad shoulders. His hair was as dark as a raven's wing, and his eyes were a piercing, unearthly silver that seemed to strip the warmth from the room. Behind him stood his vanguard commander, Bastian, a scarred Lycan who surveyed the crumbling Whitmore estate with undisguised disgust. Lord Godwin scrambled forward, bowing so low his nose nearly brushed the muddy floor. "Your Majesty, King Cailan, we are honored by your unexpected presence." "Spare me the pleasantries, Godwin." Cailan's voice was a low, vibrating rumble that made the glass in the windows rattle. It was a voice used to commanding beasts and breaking armies. "The Pact of Oakhaven is clear. You owe my kingdom 50,000 gold pieces. The deadline passed at midnight. I have come for my silver, or I will take your lands and your head." Godwin's face drained of color. He trembled, wringing his hands. "My king, the blights, the taxes from the crown. I do not have the gold, but I offer you something of equal value. A treaty. An alliance sealed by blood." Cailan sneered, exposing the faint glint of elongated canines. "An alliance with a bankrupt, decaying house. You insult my intelligence." "A bride," Godwin blurted out in desperation. "The Alpha King has no mate, no heir to secure the northern territories against the rogue Pax. I offer my daughter. Her womb is untouched, her bloodline noble." From her hiding spot behind the tapestry, Seraphina's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Cecily, who was shrinking into the corner, weeping hysterically at the thought of being given to a monstrous shapeshifter. The Lycans were considered brutal savages by the southern nobles, known for tearing their enemies limb from limb. Cailan's silver eyes drifted toward the weeping Cecily. His expression hardened into pure revulsion. "I have no use for a fragile, weeping doll who will freeze to death in my fortress within a week." Godwin swallowed hard, his eyes darting frantically before they locked onto the tapestry. A cruel, calculated light flickered in his eyes. He marched over, grabbed the fabric, and tore it away, exposing Seraphina to the harsh light of the hall. He seized her by the arm, dragging her roughly to the center of the room and throwing her onto the stone floor at the Alpha King's feet. "Not that one, my king. This one," Godwin said, panting slightly. "Seraphina. She is strong, accustomed to hard labor. She survives on scraps and does not complain. Take her as your bargain bride. cancel my debt." Seraphina slowly pushed herself up from the cold stone, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She refused to cower. She slowly raised her chin, meeting the terrifying gaze of the Alpha King. Cailan stared down at her. He took in her bruised wrists, the dirt on her cheek, the threadbare dress, and the fierce, defiant fire burning in her dark amber eyes. He stepped closer, the sheer physical mass of him suffocating the air around her. He reached out, his massive, leather-clad hand grasping her jaw. His grip was entirely unyielding, yet strangely devoid of the frantic cruelty her father possessed. He tilted her head from side to side, inspecting her like one might inspect a horse at auction. "She smells of mud, ash, and fear," Cailan stated flatly. "She is resilient, Your Majesty. 3 crates of silver is all her life is worth to me. But to you, she is a vessel for an heir," Godwyn pleaded. Cailan's thumb brushed over a small, fading scar on Seraphina's cheekbone. He didn't look at Godwyn when he spoke. 3 crates of silver to cancel a 50,000 gold debt. You value your flesh and blood very cheaply, Lord Godwyn. Cailan released her face and turned his back. "Draw up the contract. I will take the girl. And Godwyn, if you ever cross into the northern steppes, I will rip your spine from your body." Within the hour, Seraphina's fate was sealed in blood and ink. She was given no time to pack. Not that she had anything of value to take. As she walked out to the heavily armored carriage waiting in the courtyard, her father did not say goodbye. Cecily simply watched from an upstairs window, looking relieved. The journey to the fortress of Skjöld took 5 agonizing days. The temperature plummeted with every league they traveled north. Inside the dark wooden carriage, Seraphina shivered violently, her thin dress offering no protection against the biting frost. Cailan rode outside on a massive black destrier, refusing to share the carriage with a human. He had not spoken a single word to her since the contract was signed. On the 3rd night, when they made camp in the snow-choked forests, Bastian, the vanguard commander, approached her by the fire. He wordlessly tossed a heavy, thick bear pelt over her trembling shoulders. "Do not mistake his silence for cruelty, little bird," Bastian murmured gruffly, noticing her terrified, exhausted expression. "The Alpha King carries a heavier burden than you know. Survive the cold, keep your head down, and you may live to see spring." Seraphina wrapped the pelt tightly around herself, staring into the flames. She was no longer a daughter of House Whitmore. She was property, a breeder bought for a fraction of a debt. But as she watched Cailan's towering silhouette moving through the blizzard, unfazed by the sub-zero temperatures, a quiet resolve hardened in her chest. She had survived her father's tyranny. She would survive this monster, too. The fortress of Skjöld was not a castle. It was a jagged scar of black stone carved directly into the side of a frozen mountain. When the heavy iron portcullis slammed shut behind the carriage, Seraphina felt the finality of her imprisonment echo in her bones. The courtyard was swarming with lycans. Huge, heavily muscled men and women stopped their sparring and blacksmithing to stare at the carriage. Their golden and amber eyes tracked Seraphina with open hostility and predatory curiosity as she stepped out into the knee-deep snow. To them, she was an outsider, a weak, scentless human brought into their sacred den. Cailan dismounted his warhorse and strode toward the fortress doors, barking orders in the harsh, guttural lycan tongue. He didn't even look back to see if Seraphina was following. Bastian escorted her inside. The interior of the fortress was aggressively Spartan. There were no tapestries, no gilded mirrors, no comforts. The walls were bare stone, and the hearths were unlit, as the lycan's naturally high body temperatures made fire unnecessary for warmth. For Seraphina, it was a freezing tomb. She was led to a massive bedchamber high in the eastern tower. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving her alone in the gloom. Hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the room into near total darkness. Near midnight, the heavy wooden door groaned open. Cailan entered, stripping off his heavy armor plates and leaving them to clatter on the stone floor. The moonlight caught the brutal network of scars crisscrossing his muscular torso. Seraphina backed away until her shoulders hit the cold stone wall, her heart in her throat. The dreaded wedding night, the consummation of the bargain. Cailan stopped a few feet from her. His chest heaved slightly, and the silver of his eyes seemed cloudy, almost erratic. He stared at her, not with lust, but with a strange, agonizing conflict. "Do not cower," he snapped, his voice rougher than usual. "I will not force myself upon a terrified girl. I bought you for optics, to pacify the elders who demand a queen, and for your bloodline's resistance to cold." He stepped closer, moving with terrifying speed, and caged her against the wall with his massive arms. He leaned down, his face burying into the crook of her neck. Seraphina squeezed her eyes shut, preparing for the bite, for the tearing of flesh. Instead, she felt the blunt pressure of his teeth scrape hard against her collarbone. Enough to bruise, enough to leave his overwhelming scent of pine and ozone on her skin, but not enough to break the skin. He dragged his nose along her pulse point, inhaling deeply. A long, shuddering breath escaped him, and for a fleeting second, the terrifying Alpha King seemed incredibly weary. He pulled back, his eyes clear once more. "You bear my scent now. The pack will know you are mine. They will not harm you. But stay out of the lower dungeons, and do not cross Lady Rowena." With that, Cailan turned, shifted into a massive, terrifying black wolf right before her eyes, and leapt out the open balcony window into the freezing night. In the weeks that followed, Seraphina learned the harsh reality of her new life. Cailan ignored her completely, spending his days drilling his soldiers and his nights hunting in the feral wilderness. The pack treated her like a ghost. But the true danger came from Lady Rowena. Rowena was a high-ranking female of the Ashen Pine pack, a stunning, ruthless lycan who had long expected to become Cailan's mate. "You are a fragile little twig," Rowena hissed one afternoon in the armory, intentionally bumping her shoulder hard enough to send Seraphina sprawling into a rack of spears. "He will break you. He is suffering from the feral blight, human. His wolf is consuming his mind. Soon he will lose all humanity. He needed a human with dormant witch blood to anchor his soul, a pathetic ancient remedy. But it won't work. When he turns completely, I will be the one to put him down and take the throne." Seraphina picked herself up, her amber eyes blazing, but she kept her mouth shut. She remembered her mother's old herbal journals. The feral blight, a degenerative neurological curse that afflicted alpha lycans, driving them into mindless, bloodthirsty beasts. That was why Cailan's eyes were sometimes clouded. That was why he isolated himself. He wasn't just cold, he was trying to protect the pack from himself. The climax of the winter arrived on the night of the blood moon, a mandatory feast for all pack leaders. The great hall was packed with hundreds of roaring, drinking lycans. Seraphina was seated at the high table, a decorative prop beside Cailan, who looked pale and strained to his troueur, his jaw clenched in constant agony. Rowena stepped forward to offer the traditional Alpha's toast. She carried a massive, jewel-encrusted silver chalice filled with dark, spiced wine. She smiled sweetly, offering it to Kaelin. As the chalice passed near her, Seraphina caught a scent beneath the heavy spices. A sharp, bitter aroma that she knew intimately from her years tending her cruel father's poisonous gardens. Aconitum, wolfsbane, laced with liquid silver. To a human, it would cause vomiting. To a lichen on the verge of the feral blight, it would instantly sever their mind, triggering an unstoppable, murderous rampage that would force the pack to execute him. Rowena was orchestrating a coup. Kaelin reached for the cup, his hands trembling slightly from the effort to suppress his inner wolf. He raised it toward his lips. Seraphina didn't think. Driven by a sudden, inexplicable instinct to protect the monster who had spared her dignity, she lunged. She slammed her hands into the heavy silver chalice. It flew from Kaelin's grasp, clattering loudly against the stone floor. The dark wine splashed everywhere, searing a hole into the wooden table where it landed, a clear sign of the potent acid-like reaction of refined wolfsbane. The great hall fell into a dead, terrifying silence. Rowena's eyes flashed with murderous fury. "Treason!" she shrieked. "The human attacked the Alpha!" Kaelin slowly turned his head toward Seraphina. His eyes were entirely pitch black. The wolf had broken through the surface. A low, demonic growl ripped from his throat, shaking the very foundations of the hall. He reached out, his claws extending, wrapping around Seraphina's slender throat and lifting her clean off the ground. She gasped for air, kicking her feet. "Poison!" she choked out, pointing desperately at the sizzling wood. "She tried to kill you." The great hall of the fortress held its collective breath, suspended in a moment of sheer, unadulterated terror. Kaelin's pitch-black eyes, now entirely devoid of their usual piercing silver clarity, bore into Seraphina's soul. The monstrous beast within him, rabid, starving, and unleashed by the treacherous poison, demanded he snap her fragile neck. But the faint scent of her blood, mingling with the intoxicating aroma of her unwavering courage, pierced through the blinding, suffocating haze of the feral blight. With a violent, bone-rattling shudder that seemed to shake the very foundations of the ancient stronghold, Kaelin released his crushing grip. Seraphina crumpled to the unforgiving stone floor, gasping hungrily for the freezing air, her hands instinctively flying to her bruised throat. Bastion, reacting with the blinding, unparalleled lightning speed of a seasoned vanguard commander, lunged toward the splintered high table. He dropped heavily to one knee, dipping the gleaming tip of his runic steel dagger directly into the sizzling, corrosive puddle of dark, spiced wine. The enchanted metal immediately hissed violently, turning a sickly toxic shade of violet before their very eyes. "Wolfsbane!" Bastion roared, his thunderous voice echoing menacingly off the vaulted, smoke-stained ceilings. "Refined with liquid silver and shadow root, a lethal immediate dose designed to shatter the mind." Absolute chaos erupted within the massive chamber. Hundreds of towering lichens shifted simultaneously, their bones cracking, popping and reshaping rapidly as they bared their razor-sharp teeth at the immediate unseen threat. Rowena's traditionally beautiful, haughty face twisted into an impossibly ugly mask of pure panic and desperation. She scrambled backward frantically, her luxurious, imported crimson silk gown tearing loudly on the jagged flagstones. "It was the human! She did this!" Rowena shrieked, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at the gasping girl. "She brought it from the treacherous southern valleys. She is an assassin sent by the crown to destroy us all. Kill her now!" "Liar!" Seraphina rasped, her voice rough but filled with a fiery defiance. She forced herself to stand, refusing to look weak or defeated before the watching predatory pack. "My father is Lord Godwyn, yes, but my mother was Fiona Kensington, I know the scent of every deadly poison grown in the corrupt soil of this continent. I smelled the bitter aconitum before it even reached his lips. You served the chalice, Lady Rowena. You hold the treason in your hands. Realizing her meticulous, long-planned coup was crumbling into dust, Rowena shifted instantaneously into a sleek, muscular, silver-furred wolf. She prepared to bolt for the heavy, iron-reinforced oak doors, desperately seeking the safety of the freezing night. But Kaelin was incomparably faster. Even while violently fighting the agonizing acidic rot consuming his mind, the mighty Alpha King moved like a terrifying shadow of death. He tackled Rowena brutally to the icy ground, his massive, deadly jaws snapping mere inches from her exposed throat. He did not kill her. Instead, he pinned her down with bone-crushing, inescapable force until Commander Bastion slammed incredibly heavy iron manacles, tightly clamped with glowing blue runic wards, around her wrists, forcefully restricting her back into her weak, human form. But the sudden, explosive exertion had cost Kaelin far too dearly. The immense physical stress of the brutal attack, combined dangerously with the lingering, toxic fumes of the vaporized silver, pushed his already incredibly fragile neurological state completely past its absolute breaking point. Kaelin collapsed heavily onto the stones, desperately clutching his head as a guttural, terrifying scream of absolute, unendurable agony ripped violently through his broad chest. His thick veins bulged prominently beneath his pale skin, glowing with a sickening, chaotic, pulsating dark purple energy. The dreaded feral blight was rapidly taking full control of his body and soul. "Restrain him immediately," Bastion ordered, hot tears suddenly gleaming in his usually stoic, hardened golden eyes. "If he turns completely feral right now, we will have absolutely no choice but to put him down permanently. Bind him tightly with the heavy anchor chains." 6 massive, heavily scarred veteran warriors hesitated for an agonizing moment, weeping openly as they approached their deeply beloved, suffering king. They quickly brought forth massive, enchanted chains forged from the coldest, purest iron, wrapping them securely around Kaelin's violently writhing limbs. He thrashed violently against the restraints, roaring loudly like a deeply wounded fallen god, the heartbreaking sound shattering the resolve of everyone present in the grim fortress. Seraphina watched the utterly terrifying, heartbreaking display unfold, her chest aching with a profound, completely unexpected sorrow. This terrifying monster, this notoriously ruthless northern warlord, had miraculously spared her dignity and innocence. He had actively shielded her from his own consuming darkness during those long, freezing nights. She absolutely could not just stand idly by and let him die in such unimaginable agony. The ancient blood of a true Kensington absolutely does not run away from dark curses. It actively devours them, turning poison into unyielding power. Her mother's desperate, dying words echoed powerfully in her frantic memory. Seraphina pushed determinedly past the heavily armed, heavily armored royal guards. "Let me through immediately," she commanded firmly. Her voice unexpectedly held a strange, ancient, resonant authority that subconsciously compelled the massive Lycans to step aside without a single hint of protest. She knelt gracefully beside the violently thrashing Alpha King. His eyes were entirely, completely black, totally devoid of human reason, mercy, or recognition. He snapped his massive teeth aggressively at her, completely transformed into a feral, mindless monster tragically trapped inside a man's powerful body. Seraphina did not flinch or retreat. She slowly withdrew a small, rusted iron paring knife from her simple wool apron, a basic tool she regularly used to meticulously forage tough roots in the harsh, unforgiving northern forests. Without a single, fleeting second of hesitation, she sliced the delicate palm of her left hand. Bright, crimson, shimmering blood welled up instantly. It absolutely did not smell like normal, mundane human blood. To the highly sensitive lichens in the grand room, it smelled overpoweringly like ancient, untouched pine forests, blooming, mystical nightshade, and raw, crackling electrical ozone. It was the undeniable, potent scent of old, forgotten earth magic. Seraphina firmly pressed her bleeding, warm palm directly against Kaelin's freezing, sweat-drenched forehead. "Hear my voice clearly, Alpha King of the North," Seraphina whispered softly, closing her amber eyes tightly and consciously, tapping into the deep, dormant well of Kensington magic she had forcefully suppressed her entire tragic life out of sheer, absolute fear of the Inquisitor's burning pyre. "I willingly anchor your fractured soul securely to mine. I tightly bind your wild, untamed beast directly to my steady heartbeat. Find the light hidden within the blinding darkness." A massive, invisible shockwave of pure, blinding silver energy blasted aggressively outward from their single point of intimate contact. Every single torch mounted in the massive great hall flickered wildly, simultaneously turning a brilliant, burning sapphire blue. Kaelin gasped incredibly loudly, his heavily muscled back arching sharply off the cold stone floor, as the dark, corrupted, poisonous veins on his neck instantly began to recede and vanish. The terrifying, endless blackness rapidly bled out of his eyes, wonderfully replaced once again by that piercing, intelligent, unearthly silver clarity. He fell back exhaustedly against the hard stone, panting heavily, cold sweat pouring profusely down his handsome, aristocratic face. The consuming madness was completely gone. The horrific blight had been permanently burned away by the ancient witch's anchor. Kaelin looked up slowly at the battered, deeply bruised, and actively bleeding young girl bravely kneeling affectionately over him. In that incredibly profound moment, the notoriously terrifying Alpha King finally realized he had absolutely not merely bought a fragile, worthless peasant. He had unwittingly purchased his own miraculous salvation. Spring broke triumphantly through the seemingly endless grip of the brutal northern winter. The massive fortress of Skirl, once considered a bleak, freezing tomb, now buzzed happily with vibrant new life and hopeful energy. Seraphina's social status within the complex pack dynamic had shifted dramatically overnight. She went from being a completely disregarded human pawn to the highly revered savior of the entire northern realm. The hardened pack members respectfully bowed their heads deeply whenever she gracefully walked the high battlements. The fiercest warriors proudly offered her their absolute, unquestioning protection. Yet King Kaelin remained incredibly protective of her, permanently keeping her close to his imposing side. The mystical bond between them had deepened remarkably, beautifully forged in the terrifying fires of near-death experiences and ancient magic. But the newfound fragile peace was abruptly shattered when Vanguard Commander Bastion finally returned from a lengthy scouting mission deep within the treacherous southern valleys. He aggressively dragged a miserable, shivering prisoner closely behind his massive black warhorse. It was Lord Godwyn. Seraphina stood silently on the high stone balcony overlooking the bustling main courtyard. She was warmly wrapped in a luxurious crimson velvet cloak, heavily lined with pristine white snow fox fur. It was a deeply thoughtful gift from the grateful king. She watched intently, her expression completely unreadable, as her abusive father was unceremoniously thrown face first into the freezing, slushy mud directly at Kaelin's heavy steel boots. "My great king, have mercy upon me!" Godwyn wept loudly, coughing up dirty water and slush. "I gave you my beautiful untouched daughter. Our financial debt was completely settled." Kaelin stood incredibly tall, his massive physical presence radiating an overwhelming aura of absolute royal authority. He looked down slowly at the pathetic, groveling lord with completely undisguised and profound revulsion. "The financial debt was indeed settled, Lord Godwyn, but your blatant, unforgivable treason was absolutely not." We aggressively interrogated Lady Rowena for 3 days before her permanent deadly exile to the freezing dead wastes. She tearfully confessed absolutely everything regarding your secret, treacherous letters. Seraphina's breath hitched noticeably in her throat. She slowly and gracefully descended the winding stone stairs, walking calmly out into the center of the expansive courtyard. Kaelin's piercing silver eyes softened wonderfully, filled with deep warmth, as he looked at her briefly, before instantly turning back to Godwyn with murderous cold fury. "You absolutely did not merely sell your daughter to me to quickly pay off a foolish gambling debt. You actively and maliciously conspired with Rowena to destroy my reign. You knew intimately of the feral blight. You knew perfectly well that sending a human possessing dormant, powerful witch blood would instantly trigger the ancient volatile prophecies, deliberately creating massive chaos and bloody rebellion within my loyal ranks. Rowena secretly promised to give you back your lost fertile lands and a powerful seat on the Northern Council once I was permanently dead. You coldly sent your own flesh and blood into a frozen, miserable hell, genuinely hoping she would unknowingly become the ultimate catalyst for my brutal public execution." Godwyn paled dramatically, trembling completely uncontrollably as he looked desperately at Seraphina for any sign of salvation. "Sarah, my sweet beloved child, please tell him. Tell this angry king I only wanted the absolute best for you. I spared you from the terrible famine ravaging our home." Seraphina stared silently at the broken man who had cruelly tormented her for 2 decades, who had consistently treated her exactly like a highly contagious, unwanted disease, who had literally sold her precious life for exactly 3 wooden crates of common silver and a deeply twisted political assassination plot. She felt absolutely nothing inside but a profound, incredibly cold pity. "You are absolutely no real father of mine," Seraphina stated, her clear, melodious voice steady, powerful, and ringing beautifully clear across the completely silent courtyard. "You deliberately threw me to the hungry wolves, fully expecting them to quickly and mercilessly tear me apart. But you completely forgot one very important and crucial thing, Lord Godwyn." She stepped confidently forward, standing proudly shoulder to shoulder with the incredibly towering and muscular Alpha. "I successfully learned exactly how to aggressively lead the pack." Kaelin's beautiful and traditionally stern lips curved slowly into a fierce and incredibly proud smile. "Take this pathetic, treacherous worm immediately to the deepest, dark, icy silver mines of Black Ridge," the Alpha King loudly ordered his fiercely loyal guards. "Let him endlessly and tirelessly dig in the pitch black for the shiny silver he loves so incredibly much until his greedy hands permanently freeze to the heavy iron pickaxe." As Lord Godwyn was quickly dragged away screaming hysterically, Kaelin turned his full attention to Seraphina. The massive courtyard, filled with hundreds of highly hardened Lycan warriors, watched in absolute, stunned, breathless silence. Their notoriously fearsome and completely invincible Alpha King did the truly unthinkable and impossible thing. King Cailan dropped slowly and deliberately to one knee right there in the freezing slush and dirty mud. He gently took her small hand, humbly bowing his dark head in deep, loving devotion before the entire observing realm. I arrogantly bought you, believing I was trading mere silver for a political shield. I was a fool. You bravely faced my terrifying darkness. Please, rule this wild, feral kingdom endlessly, by my side, my cherished queen. Did Seraphina and Cailan's breathtaking journey capture your heart? This tale of betrayal, ancient magic, and a ferocious Alpha King falling to his knees proves that true power lies in sacrifice, not cruelty. If you loved this dramatic werewolf romance, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your fellow fantasy romance lovers. Ring the notification bell so you never miss another epic story. Drop a comment down below with your favorite shocking twist from the video.